Sometimes we forget why we're here. It's easy to fall off track. These help us remember.
These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Growing up, I had a dream, something no one else could see. Tell me what it means when your faith is falling beneath your knees and you can't breathe. Everything you see reminds you of what you're not or something you won't be. You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they wanna do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shame. And that's the reason I'm staying up late, trying to find a way to escape the stereotypes this day and age is making me feel like the only way I'll be happy is getting signed to a label and making money through rapping. I wanna share my emotion because this world is attacking the very principle of life that lets the people be happy. If you don't have a reason to breathe, why even live? These battle scars are impressions of everything that it is.
Don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Now, if I had a voice that reached 100 million people, I'd tell them there's a reason that we're all created equal. Cause some decide to be great and some decide a sequel to an average person's life is simply what they want to be. So you make your decision, all I know is what I'm given won't define the life I lead or the way I dwell in existence. I've seen a greater image on the walls of where I'm living, and the words twisted and scripted remind me of something written. Faith is a gift that is given down to the people. If one believes it, one receives it. It's given if it is needed. Don't ever think you're trapped in a life that you never wanted. Your options are infinite, that's some mathematical logic. I'm not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers and these battle scars on my church. Not saying I'm a prophet, I'm speaking for what it's worth. These lyrics define my prayers, these battle scars on my church.
Scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battle scars don't look like they're fading, don't look like they're ever gone away. They ain't never gonna change. These battles.
Well, hello everyone. How are you doing? And hello, JJ. I do see you in chat, and you can see I've got Blast from the Past shirt on. Mike and I need to do another Cult of RONR. Anyway, it's been a minute. It's been about a week. Just a busy time of year for me, and I almost didn't get to do this evening, but I'm like, I have to stream because there will not be a stream tomorrow because tomorrow is an LNC meeting, unless I do it during the day, but I think I'm going down to storage in the day. Let's do the YouTuber stuff. Where is it? Oh my God, I don't have it on the screen, so I'm just gonna say it. I don't have my little drop downs because I done messed up. I done messed up, Ron. So, okay, obscure reference. If you know, you know. Please subscribe or wait till the end. And if you like what you see and you're not a current subscriber, I would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Also, you can follow me on X Twitter. Of course, I'm going to have to spell my name for those of you who don't know. It's CARYNNANHARLOS. That's my @ on Twitter. And last but not least, all super chats matter, as do super thanks. And my Patreon is patreon.com/Pink Flame of Liberty. And I'm also going to stick up, if I can figure out how to do this on the fly. I normally don't know how to do this on the fly, but I'd like to stick up on the screen, and it didn't work. Well, I might have to save this for next time. I will put it in live chat, but I did announce was it like 3 weeks ago? And I probably did it on YouTube. I don't remember as whether I did or I didn't. So if I didn't, this is the first time on YouTube that I am rerunning for national secretary. I'm sure some people will have some questions about that because I originally was committed to just 3 terms. Over the course of this term, I have done a couple shows on why in voluntary societies I've completely changed my mind about term limits. But you know, if you want to hold that against me, you certainly can. But I have decided to rerun, and what I'm going to stick in live chat, and I'll also put in comments, maybe in the info box, is the link to my campaign fund. I am not doing crazy campaigning the way I did last term, where I raised a lot of money last term. This is going to be for just some basic campaign things, like getting maybe doing a mailer, getting a table at convention, which is first priority. So I'm going to stick this link here. And what is great about giving to my campaign in order to get a table at convention is your money serves double duty. You've helped my campaign, but I, in turn, go and give that money to the party. So it's like a double donation almost. I mean, you're helping me, and then it goes to the party, which is, to me, a fantastic opportunity if you support my campaign. So I do have my GoFundMe there. I'll do a graphic or something like that. It's on my Twitter account as well. And hello, Treat. So, what are we talking about today? Well, this is going to be somewhat of an unusual show. I watched this Matt Walsh show. I'm getting back to one of my favorite obsessions, Matt Walsh. And I didn't break it into clips. I listened to it and I'm like, you want to know what? I'd like to react in real time. So I have listened to it once, but I haven't sat and taken notes. To be honest with you, I'm not even exactly sure what my opinion is. This is almost like when we were talking about the Colorado Supreme Court case and whether or not the president is an officer of the United States. I didn't really know my opinion on it. I worked through it with you guys live on the show and did come to a definite opinion at the end of the show. So we might do this same thing with Matt. So if you don't know, I forgot what state this is in. He'll say it in his video. But there is some state, and I hate using the term public building, public property, but we're just going to use statist terms because all the disclaiming just takes way too long. So there was this public building that had a nativity scene. And the Satanic temple decided they were going to troll the Christians by saying, if you're going to use public property for a religious display, you have to be open to all comers. And apparently they won a court case and they put up like this devil statue. And an elected in that state got super upset about it, this Christian man, and he beheaded it. And this was quite the controversy a few weeks ago. I'm always late on these things. But I had other things to talk about. I sometimes like doing the LP controversies. So we're going to watch this Matt Walsh video. I'm going to start and stop it and give some commentary. And I would love to know your thoughts in chat. Just remember that the perspective that I'm going to be coming from, you obviously don't need to. And you might have a different take even from the same perspective that I do. I'm going to try to be coming at this, of course, from a libertarian perspective, and not just a libertarian perspective, a radical libertarian perspective. But let's see if I succeed. So let's start with this video, shall we?
So this week we talked about the Satanic altar that had been set up inside the Iowa Capitol building, and it was put there by the Satanic temple as a response to the manger scene that is also inside the Capitol building. The temple claims that it has the religious liberty to set up satanic altars in government buildings if it wants to. And the Iowa state government didn't even attempt to fight them on it. There was no, the only thing the Iowa state government fought them on was that you can't have an actual severed goat's head, which is what they originally wanted. But other than that, you go ahead, Satanists, set up your altar.
Okay, so Iowa. now we know where it was from. And actually, I like Matt's terminology of government building, like calling them government schools. So, okay, we'll go with government building. So there was this nativity scene in this government building in Iowa, and then the Satanic Temple sued or whatever to be able to put up their statue, but apparently they weren't allowed to put up a severed goat head. I actually would like to go read that court decision because I'm wondering what the rationale was. Now, I don't want to see a severed goat head, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see a devil statue either, to be honest with you, but this isn't about what I want. I'm very curious as to what the reasoning was for denying the severed goat head. I would assume it was probably on hygiene grounds, that having rotting flesh, unless they're going to put it in a big formaldehyde thing like those dead frogs in high school biology. I might go to try to find this case. I want to know why the severed goat head got denied. Am I the only one who's really curious as to what the court's reasoning was on that? So I'm assuming it was for public health reasons. Maybe. All right, let's continue.
In the State House. And so they relented right away, and they let this depraved mockery occur. Well, yesterday, a man named Michael Cassidy decided, Iowa resident, a veteran, decided to do something about it. And here's what he did. This is the Post-Millennial reporting. A satanic altar erected in the Iowa Capitol building has been torn down and beheaded by a Christian and former military officer. According to the Sentinel, Michael Cassidy pushed over and decapitated the statue, which was placed in the building by members of the Satanic Temple of Iowa after receiving permission, and discarded the head of the statue into the trash.
Okay, we're stopping there for a second because I was mistaken about a fact. Again, you're getting my live reactions. I thought he was unelected in Iowa, but apparently not. But don't know yet. I saw in chat that Dave Davis said the guy was from Mississippi, but he's Christian guy, former military. That's the background. For some reason, I thought he was unelected, but it really doesn't matter. I'm going to go down another rabbit trail here, though I'm still like so intensely curious as to why the severed goat head wasn't allowed. Oh crap. Are anyone else here surprised? Now, it's probably just one person. I don't know. Maybe it's a whole group. I've never been to Iowa. I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone from Iowa here. I would never think that there would be enough, complete, expert level trolls to form a satanic temple of Iowa. Does that just seem like kind of, when you hear the Satanic Temple, you expect to hear of some big, I don't know, maybe, now I'm throwing shade on everybody. I would expect it from California. Adrian, that's for you. But Iowa, I feel like that Wayne's World skit where they're like, and here we are in Delaware. It's just, I don't know. I did not expect it to be Iowa. But okay, so this is the statement that the person who did this said. The world may tell Christians to submissively accept the legitimization of Satan. I want to do the church lady voice. But none of the founders would have considered government sanction of satanic altars inside Capitol buildings as protected by the First Amendment, Cassidy said. Now, I'm curious as to all of y'all's thoughts on that. Because I know a lot of us, okay, I'm not a constitutionalist, you all know that. I'll exploit it where it suits me, and I don't really care in other cases. I mean, that should be no secret. I'm an anarchist, obviously. But I actually do not disagree with part of this statement. I know there's this huge argument, and you all know I'm a Christian. I'm not going to come at this from Christian grounds, because to be honest with you, none of this offends me as a Christian. They're trolling. It's a troll. I actually to the trolling level. So none of this is about offense as a Christian. I'm pretty chill. But that sentence about whether or not the founders would have considered this protected by the First Amendment, I tend to think this statement is correct, that they would not have. And I know a lot of us libertarians tend to be originalists when it comes to interpretation of the Constitution. I would have to say I'm originalist when it suits me, and I'm not when it not. You know, again, no surprise. But the big argument that rages as to whether or not we were founded as a Christian country, I know people like to say we were not. I argued in another show, whether I like it or not, we, I believe, were. It doesn't matter that some of the founders were not Christians. I could go found something that I don't necessarily believe in general. I mean, let me give you an example. I'm not a huge fan of democracy, and I'm an anarchist. Yeah, I'm in a political party. That doesn't, it means it's the thing that best suits my goals right now. It doesn't mean it's my end game. So the fact that some of the founders were deists, that doesn't mean we weren't founded as a Christian country. The majority of the residents, the citizens of the country, were Christians. And there were, in plenty of states, blasphemy laws and all kinds of restrictions on freedom of religion. So I do not think it is incorrect that to say that the founders would have said, nope, perfectly fine to have a satanic altar inside a Capitol building. And I see, I'm going to put this on the screen because I'm going to disagree with this, but I could be wrong. Again, I'm hoping we're working through this together. Where JJ said, I think they would have objected to the nativity scene. I do not. Congress would open up with Christian prayers in the beginning. I really do not think that they would have objected to the nativity scene. There were all kinds of Christian rituals that were done very early in this country. So I think that statement's probably correct. However, do I think the First Amendment protects it? I'm going to give you, Matt's going to get into this a bit. I'm going to qualify this yes a bit later on. Yes, I do think it's protected by the First Amendment, whether or not the founders would have thought so. So, because I'm probably not going to explain this well, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but you know how some people will say, yeah, but when the Second Amendment was passed, you know, people were using these primitive guns and they never would have, you know, sanctioned, the powerful weapons we have now. And I disagree with that as well. I do think that the intent has to change with the times. And when you're... not the intent, that's the wrong way. I think that the application has to change with the times. You look at the intent was to protect self-defense. They can't see the future, and I do think it includes self-defense today. The freedom of religion provision, there wasn't much differences in religion back then, except for what they would be thinking of as differences would be whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant, or within Protestantism, whether you're a Calvinist or you were an Arminian. And those sorts of things is what they were thinking of at the time for religious toleration. And if we expand that out to the much more multicultural and diverse sets of beliefs that we have today, I do think that fits in with the original intent. Maybe that I didn't say that quite so gracefully, but hopefully you got what I was trying to say. So yes, I do think today that such a thing is in fact protected by the First Amendment, that it is reflective of the religious diversity that we have today. But let's continue. Oh, the first sentence. All of that to me is irrelevant. That's fine. You may think that you don't like the world telling you what to do as a Christian. Well, I will quote Candace Owens here and say, get a helmet. Life is rough. You don't, how do I even word this as well? You don't have to accept it for yourself that it's legitimate, but you don't get to destroy property to tell other people that they can't accept it as legitimate. You just don't get to do that as a Christian. And you want to know what? If you are in fact a true Christian, you're supposed to expect persecution in this world and for the world to come against you, because Christians are not, they're in the world, but not of the world. So acting in this manner, because you're offended, don't know what to tell you. And I see, I'm going to put this comment up here on screen. I agree with Treat. He's a fellow Christian. I don't agree with the nativity scene being there. I do think that if you are going to have any kind of religious symbols, you kind of have to be open to all takers, or have some kind of other level ground. Like, we have this amount of space that we're going to dedicate to public displays of religious symbolism, and it's going to be allocated by lottery, or maybe there's some kind of fee that goes to charity or something. So Matt is going to get into the vandalism angle, and I'll discuss it then. I just know he's going to get into that. But just to say, I agree with chat. It was vandalism. You can't vandalize something just because it offends you. And here's where Matt is terribly inconsistent. Okay, let's continue.
He told the outlet that he destroyed the altar on Thursday to awaken Christians to the anti-Christian acts promoted by our government. Cassie said, quote, "The world may tell Christians to submissively accept the legitimization of Satan, but none of the founders would have considered government sanction of satanic altars inside Capitol buildings as protected by the First Amendment. Anti-Christian values have steadily been mainstreamed more and more in recent decades, and Christians have largely acted like proverbial frogs in the boiling pots of water."
Stop here. What are the Christians supposed to do? Force Christianity on people that have what he considers to be anti-Christian values? The right is turning quite authoritarian, and Christian nationalism is certainly creeping into the mainstream. And as a Christian, I find that alarming. And I see Dave Davis's comment. This is probably why I thought he wasn't elected. So he's running for something. I thought he was already elected. And correct, that was probably a publicity stunt if he is running for something. But let's continue with Matt here.
Cassidy turned himself into officers who were present in the building, who confirmed the Satanic Temple of Iowa seeks to press charges. Cassidy was charged with fourth-degree criminal mischief. Cassie said, quote, "I saw this blasphemous statue and was outraged. My conscience is held captive to the word of God, not to bureaucratic decree, and so I acted."
To stop again here. So, and I'm not trying to paint another whole religion with a broad brush, but there are Islamic radicals who will say, you do a cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. Well, I don't care that going and killing cartoonists is against the law. My conscience is held to the word of Allah. So, yes, no, this isn't killing somebody, but it is the same principle. So that's fine, I guess. Do the crime, do the time. But it's funny how this is condoned by people like Matt, because he will go on to condone it. Whereas if this was done by, if the baby Jesus in the main manger in the nativity scene was beheaded by atheists who were offended by it, he would not be. And we are dealing with government property here.
Just, awesome. Great response. And great to see it. And by the way, what he said is, everything he said is obviously completely correct, including the point about our founding fathers would not have considered this protected by the First Amendment. And everybody knows that. Don't even try. Like, do you really think the founding fathers would have accepted satanic altars inside, the state house of any state?
Okay. And again, I've agreed with him there. But I also, you're agreeing with this guy who is objecting to what he saw as an idol, a satanic idol in a government building. I think the way you're treating the founders here is quite idolatrous. In fact, I think most of the patriotic observances of this country are idolatrous. As some of you may know, and some people are extremely offended by it, I do not say the Pledge of Allegiance. I do not sing any patriotic songs, and I do not stand. And that has nothing to do with me now being an anarchist or a libertarian. I started doing this now going on 15 years ago because of religious convictions. It just struck me one day how absolutely idolatrous it is to stand and hold your hand over your heart and pledge allegiance to a cloth or a country. No, Christ is King. So I stopped doing all of those patriotic observances because I felt they were idolatrous. And to say, well, the founders thought this or that, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean they were right. I mean, I hate to be pulling like a typical leftist talking point here, but the country was founded with slavery. So I don't hold their opinions on everything. I do think they were a great leap forward in political evolution in a lot of ways, though allowing slavery to remain in place was despicable. I don't hold them as the ultimate and moral compass or what's right. Back then, Matt, the founders would have thought a lot of things not acceptable. Like me having a strong opinion the way I am. I mean, it might not have been considered illegal, but, I'm very grateful for the fact that people today have different opinions on women's rights than the founders did. Now, I love this expression, because I'm not like overly judging them either. I love this expression that the past is like a foreign country. People do things differently there. And I think we need to remember that sometimes, both when we're trying to hold up the past as an example, but also when we're being critical of them. Because I know most of us would like to think we're different. But statistically, if we lived in the South back then, we probably personally would have just accepted slavery. We'd like to think we'd be different. And maybe libertarians would, not because I'm like holding up libertarians, we're just very contrarian to existing systems. So I would think somebody with a libertarian mindset today might have actually been an abolitionist back then, but the odds are not in your favor. The odds are not in your favor whatsoever. Mike Seebeck asked, isn't devotion to Libertas and Lady Liberty idolatrous? No, I don't hold. I just happen to like the statues, but I would have no problem also seeing on the ground. I don't hold any particular reverence to it. I just like the symbolism. I like the symbolism of a lot of different things. I like Bunchy down here in the corner, but I don't hold devotions to them. I don't pledge allegiance to any of it. Okay, let's continue.
Which founding father do you think would have endorsed that? Of course they wouldn't. We all know that. Now, the update here is that there was a legal defense fund set up for Cassidy by the Sentinel, which is the outlet that initially reported on this. And I was happy to chip into his legal defense. TPUSA pledged $10,000, I think. They're only looking to raise $20,000, and they raised it in like 3 hours, and then they paused the campaign. So I'd say this is a win so far overall. Somebody took down the display. They took matters into their own hands. They took the initiative. A bunch of people rallied to support that person. And it's a win. I mean, it's a big win.
First of all, $20,000 isn't going to be enough. You have any decent attorneys, $20,000 isn't going to be enough unless you've got a bunch of pro bono people, which may in fact be the case because there's going to be attorneys who wish to make a name for themselves as well. But considering wanton property damage because you were offended when there are other ways you could have dealt with it, basically he made it sound like he just couldn't control himself. It seems like a bit of an anger management problem. Like, are there other things that this person is going to get offended by and is going to lash out violently? I do not see this as a win. And I really just don't see it as a Christian win. A Christian win. But let's continue.
Now, there have been some on the right, well, of course, on the left. In fact, I just saw someone tweeted out saying this was a bigoted act. Okay, bigoted against who? The devil? Like this is devil phobia, Satan phobia. Is that sure? Yeah, you're right.
Okay, that was funny. That is, things like that are why I sometimes enjoy Matt. He does have a great dry sense of humor. You devil phobe, you. That was funny. Okay, let's continue.
So you had that on the left as expected, but even some on the right, as you would also expect, have expressed concerns. They're concerned. I don't know, I'm concerned, but this concerns me. It's concerning. I'm a little concerned. And so they've accused us, those who support Michael Cassidy, they've accused us of supporting and cheering on what legally qualifies as vandalism. That's what they've accused us of. And yes, that's exactly right. That is what we're cheering.
He's going to go on and say that is what they're encouraging. I find that extremely frightening. I don't think you should be condoning vandalism at all of anything. I said that when the BLM riots are going on. I say that when there's protests against causes that I might agree with. No, you don't condone vandalism. There are other ways to handle things. And God, that is a weird pause right there. Everyone looks weird in pauses, so I'm not like making fun of Matt for that. Video is just odd like that. It's like I say with executive orders and all of these things, like with presidents. If you're going to condone something, when it comes for you, because karma is a bitch, don't cry. And it's like, what happened with Trump? Do I think what Maine did and what Colorado did is just absolutely despicable and horrifying? Yes, on a principled ground. But am I shedding any tears personally for the Republican Party as a thing or Trump? No, they've been bending libertarians over the barrel for years. What I am sticking up for is the principle. So I think Matt can personally say, yeah, I'm not a big fan. I'm a devil phobe. Me too, by the way. I'm a devil phobe. I don't like this statue. And you can still say that and not be in favor of the vandalism. There are other ways to handle things. This is not a road you want to go down.
They also say that the Satanic Temple has the First Amendment right to set up its satanic altar inside a government building. We may not like it, but if they want to set up a satanic altar in every state house in the country, there's nothing we can do about it. We can't do anything. We just have to sit back. Every state house can be turned into a satanic, into a platform for worshiping the devil. And there's nothing we could do. We just can't do it for the sake of freedom. This is freedom. This is what freedom.
Okay, well, he's going to mock. I'm surprised he doesn't say freedom the way some of the commie leftists do and call it freedom, because the right isn't for freedom anymore. You got people like Knowles. There's going to be a video I'm going to be doing on him where he's like, well, freedom is the freedom to do what's right. Well, according to who, though I do think there are some universal norms of what we think is right and wrong. But that's like saying the freedom of speech doesn't include hate speech. It's just the rights version of that. No, you don't need freedom unless, if freedom was only the right to do things that nearly everybody agrees with and that are beautiful and lovely, that doesn't require freedom. You need freedom for things in which you're a minority, in which some people might think are objectionable. That's what you need freedom for. You need freedom of speech to say things that are unpopular. No one's going to stop you from saying popular things. But the right is, I'm getting such flashbacks of moral majority, retaking America for Christ vibe. But let's back up a little bit, because I want you to hear a mock freedom.
Freedom. This is what freedom is. The holidays are rapidly approaching, but we can find peace and calm in the craziness of the season with Hallow, the #1 Christian prayer app in the world.
Okay, I want to go past his advertisement here, but I missed. But he basically is like, that's not freedom. But let's see if we can get past this. I think when that bottom part where it doesn't say the ad anymore, we are past it. Not that I object to the app. A prayer app sounds fantastic. It's just I don't want to keep you guys here for that. So right about there seems good.
Matt Walsh. They say that if we think that it's okay to have a manger scene, then we also have to think it's okay to have a satanic altar. That's the claim. Right? That's the equivalent. So if we're opposed to BLM rioters torching a CVS, we have to also be opposed to a guy decapitating a satanic altar. And if we support a manger scene, then we also have to support a satanic altar.
False equivalence. I think there is an equivalence with the BLM thing. If you're going to be opposed to vandalism, you need to be opposed to vandalism. But false equivalence on the, if you're okay with a nativity scene, you have to be okay with a satanic altar. Define okay. Doesn't mean you have to be happy about it. If he's defining okay as it needs to be allowed, that's one thing. But okay is such a vague word. But that's not the issue. The content of the scene is not the issue as far as like the specific religion. You have to go deeper. If you're okay with religious displays in government buildings, then you can't say just my religion or just religions I like. That's the level you need to go to. And there is an answer to this other than committing vandalism. Advocate to not have religious displays in public buildings, government buildings. I don't think we should be having government buildings, but you know, that's the reality. Why is it so important to you, Matt, that a government building have a nativity scene? Don't have anything. That's the easy solution to this. Don't have religious displays that are there merely for religious purposes in government buildings. And the reason why I did that qualifier is because I told you, and I know some people disagree with me in chat. That's okay. On whether or not we were founded as a Christian country, we do have to admit that even if you don't agree with me on that claim, and it's not anything I wish to argue because I'm obviously not trying to impose Christianity on everything. I think a lot of people have such pushbacks against that because that's usually the prelude to saying, and we need to remain that way. And obviously that's not my argument. I'm just trying to look at it from a historical perspective. However, why I kind of just lost my whole choo-choo train of thought there because I just started going on the Christian Nation thing. So yeah, so why is it so important? Yeah, I know where I was going now. And I said sheerly as a religious display because I do believe in having historical displays in government property. And the fact is, the history of our country has a lot of Christian symbology in it. So on some of these displays that like had the 10 Commandments, there were instances of it where I viewed it as a historical item, not as some explicit religious item. You can't wipe out the fact that our history is deeply religious, and it's mostly a Judeo-Christian historical foundation. And you can't be tearing down historical displays, calling them religious displays, because they're depicting the historical reality of our early country. So that's why I did kind of parse that out a little bit.
We have to treat everything equally, these conservatives claim, because everything is the same. We're not allowed to notice any difference between things. They're all...
Why people think Matt is such a great arguer, I don't get, because he really isn't. I find him entertaining, but to say that under the law, these situations need to be treated equally, doesn't, he then says, well, we cannot see any difference. Feel free to see a difference, Matt. But there's a reason why justice is blind. Justice and the law cannot see a difference. You can see all the differences that you want. As far as I'm concerned, stand in front of that satanic statue and curse at it and give it the finger. Like, you can see all the differences you want. But that doesn't mean under the law there needs to be. And this is the slide into Christian nationalism.
the same. And that's what it means to be free. That's what freedom is. But no, that's not correct. Everything is not the same. You know that everything is not the same. Everyone knows it. We all know that.
Not a point. That is a diversion. It's a very clever diversion, but it's a diversion. I think I've made my point with that.
Okay, you know these things are not the same. We don't have to pretend to believe otherwise. So here's my basic position on this. And I do think, as I've argued, that there is a legal argument here that the satanic altar is not valid religious expression under the First Amendment. As I've been saying all along, according to the Satanists themselves, the whole Satanism thing is essentially a parody, a mockery. They don't even pretend to have a theological belief in the reality of Satan. So I don't think that even by pure legal standards, this qualifies as First Amendment expression.
Now, here's where I'm going to slightly agree with Matt. There are several groups that use the word Satan in their title, and I'm not an expert on these groups, but from what I understand, one of them actually are literal devil worshippers. But the Satanic Temple is atheists, as far as I know. They don't believe or worship a literal devil. They're not religious. So on that point, if you're dealing with freedom of religion under the First Amendment, and that's the argument that's being made, is that there's a religious display, then you got to have another religious display. Under the definition most people would use of religion, a troll of Christians by atheists is not religion. So I actually do think he has a point there, and I'm wondering if that is dealt with in the court case that allowed them to put that display up. So now I've got two reasons to look up that court case to find out why the severed goat head was not allowed, and if the argument was that they're not religious, they're atheists, was made in that case. Now I'm going to say something that a lot of you are going to disagree with me on, and that's okay. I think everybody is religious. I do think atheism is a religion. And let me explain why. I'm not saying this to be offensive. I have nothing but love for my atheist friends. I think everyone has a metaphysical belief. And religion is just your metaphysical belief about the world. I don't think it requires a God. To me, and again, this is my definition, you all don't have to agree. Believing there is no God, that's your religious belief. Your religion just doesn't include a God. And like I was saying to Wayne earlier, functional, and I know a lot of people won't agree with this either. There are people who have a religious belief that God is part of everything. Like, you know, God is this glass, God is you, God is this light bulb. To me, that is almost functionally equivalent to atheism, because if God is everything, God is nothing. It's like saying everything is racism. If you say everything is racism, you've just drained the word racism of all meaning. And I think if you say everything is God, you've drained the word God of all meaning. And it's functionally equivalent to atheism. But we all agree that the God is everything is a religion. So, you know, that's where I'm going with that. You don't have to agree with it. But strictly under legal standards, he's probably correct. The Satanic temples, not really a religion. There's a reason why Scientology, which, oh God, I'm just getting everyone angry today, that I do not believe is a real, like, religion under the tax code. But there's a reason why they put on the air of having an actual, what most people would consider a religion, to get this tax exempt status. But I do think Matt is technically correct here under the law, not under my peculiar, you know, which I understand is not the majority definition. And yes, 23 Skeeto, I think I don't think it's possible for a person not to be religious. I think everybody's religious. Because human beings is just part of our nature, is we have metaphysical beliefs about the world. And again, I realize that's a minority opinion. So Matt's technically correct here. So I'm wondering how the Satanic Temple got around that. For purposes of my argument here on like libertarian principles and things like that, I'm treating them as if they are a valid religion under the law. But Matt does have a point. They don't actually claim to believe in a literal Satan. And most of them, I said all of them before are atheists. I don't know that for a fact, but I do know most them are atheists, and they're certainly not devil worshippers in the sense of believing in the devil as posited by Christians and worship this thing. Actually, if you go look up and go, I'm just getting myself in all kinds of trouble here. If you go look up their philosophical tenets of the Satanic Temple, they're actually quite libertarian. And that's why there was some wackadoodle on Twitter the other day that was saying that libertarianism is basically Satanism, because the Satanic Temple, if you look at what they believe, it's basically libertarianism. Well, but they don't actually, it can't be Satanism if they don't really believe in a Satan and it's just a troll. If you're saying that people who have libertarian beliefs like to troll super serious people, yeah, guilty as charged. We do. We like to shitpost and we like to troll.
But let's forget that for a second, because that's not my fundamental point. My fundamental point is this, and this is going to blow your mind. Good things are good. Bad things are bad. That's it. That's what I believe. So,
and I think most of your opinions are bad. So now what? It's like I say with the Declaration of Independence. It says government exists by consent of the governed. Well, I'm allegedly one of the governed. I don't consent. Now what? Everyone thinks good things are good and bad things are bad, but we don't all agree on what's good and what's bad. We do in the bright line cases. We don't at the margins. And if you're not literally harming somebody else, and I'm using harm in the way that a libertarian would, I'm not going to go through the whole definition of that, you can think something is bad. Like, I do not believe drugs should be illegal. That doesn't require you to think that drugs are good. You can think drugs are bad, but it's somebody doing bad to their own body, which they should be permitted to do by the law. Doesn't mean you have to think it's the same thing as somebody who eats clean and healthy and exercises every day. Never said you can't notice differences. There's nothing that says that you can't try to encourage the culture to view such a person as untrustworthy, not of the highest moral character, whatever you might think. We're dealing with laws here. Let's say there was no law. Well, let's use, thankfully, that some drug laws were overturned. So in Colorado, you're allowed to recreationally smoke marijuana. And Matt, you don't like that. Does that mean that you then get to go and vandalize the pot smoker's bong? Because you don't like it, because good things are good and bad things are bad, and you think that's bad? And I've known plenty of people. I've known plenty of very, very functional marijuana fans, but I've known plenty of ones in which it rules their life, and they're not particularly functional. And I think it's bad not to be particularly functional. Doesn't give me the right to destroy their paraphernalia.
I support good things, and I don't support bad things. I think that good things should happen, and I think that bad things shouldn't happen. And so when a good thing happens, I say, that's good. And when a bad thing happens, I said, that's bad.
And you have every right to do that. The question is the force of government. And vandalism is bad, even if it's against something you think is bad. One thing I thought Christians understood, 2 wrongs don't make a right.
So that's how I approach life. And it's revolutionary. I mean, this is maybe to you, if you're a normal person, if you're a sane person, this is not revolutionary. But to a lot of conservatives, this is a revolutionary concept. The idea that, so you can notice when something is good and treat it as good, and when something is bad, you can treat it as bad. Really? I said, that's not what the founders would have wanted.
Okay, well, let's stop here, because now you sound just like a leftist. And let me tell you how. So you're saying because you think the satanic display is bad, and, as a Christian, I probably would agree with you. Yeah, it's bad. I'm not going to get terribly incensed over it. So then that makes vandalism okay. Well, the left says being a neo-Nazi is bad. Therefore, it's okay just to walk up and punch a neo-Nazi in the face. Good things are good and bad things are bad, and to you, that seems to justify violence against property. Why wouldn't it justify violence against a person who's talking? So you just punch him in the mouth. Now, what if instead of a statue, this guy was offended by some actual Satanist that was walking around going, "Hail Satan," or whatever it is that real Satanists do? Could he get punched in the mouth? Good things are good and bad things are bad, right, Matt? And it's okay to commit violence against bad things, even if they're not committing violence against you. You are no different than a leftist when it comes to this. It just happens to be against the things that you might happen to prefer. On this particular type of philosophical issue, is it impossible to be 100% consistent? Probably. But libertarians come as close to that as anyone else that I know.
What Thomas Jefferson would have wanted. Honestly, I don't care if that's what he wanted. If that's what he wanted or didn't want, I don't care anyway. But
Then why are you making that argument? You've been appealing to the authority of the founders this whole time, and now the truth comes out. At least I told you right up front that I will make selective appeals to the Constitution when it's convenient. I told you that right up front. But he had you strung along this whole time about the founders this, the founders that, when he should have front-loaded that with, but, really, I don't really care what they think. It's just convenient for me to invoke them. And that's okay. I invoke certain things when it's convenient, but I tell you right up front that that's what I'm doing.
But you're incorrect on what the founders would have wanted. So the idea that I'm bound by the principle of liberty and human rights to draw no distinction between good and bad is insane.
Good thing no one said that. In fact, liberty means that you do have the freedom to draw the distinction between good and bad and conduct your life accordingly. But you don't get to pick up the government gun. Now, I know in this case the force of government's kind of in the background, but I am analogizing this to his other positions, and why I say that Matt is not, he's a raging authoritarian, no different from the left, just has different targets.
And that is an idea that the guys who came up with the doctrine of human rights, which lies at the foundation of our country, did not believe. So they themselves did not share this modern notion that in order to respect everyone's rights, we have to pretend that everything is the same and be just as welcoming of bad things as we are of good. That is, again, insane. It's ridiculous. I want a good society that is ordered towards the good and where goodness is encouraged and welcomed. And I want a society where, therefore, badness is discouraged and unwelcomed.
And what is stopping you from doing that? But you just got to have the force of government behind it. Is that it, Matt? I seem to do just fine in my life with like there are people with some of the crap that's going on in our party right now that are doing things that I don't think are particularly good. Like I'm not even going to give specific examples. So we're not talking about committing any kind of actionable fraud or things like that. People that are just not behaving well. You know what you do? You shun them. And you try to encourage different sorts of things. Now, obviously, if somebody is literally, committing fraud or something like that, then that's a different matter. But within your voluntary societies, you band together with people who share your values and you try to influence the culture in that direction. No one is stopping you from doing that, Matt. The very fact that you have a YouTube channel shows that no one is stopping you. However, I do agree. I do realize that the crackdown of YouTube on the Daily Wire is pretty pathetic. So even though I don't agree with the Daily Wire's content, I absolutely believe that the voices belong in the public square. But, wanting to pick up the government gun, that is just despicable. Remember, good things are good and bad things are bad. And you want to know what's bad, Matt? Wanting to use the force of government to enforce your particular vision. Yeah, that's bad.
This is basic stuff. So, putting this in practice. If a guy spray paints, graffiti on a cop car, he sprays a cab on a cop car or whatever during a BLM riot. And then, you've got that kind of vandals. And then over here, you've got a guy dismantling a satanic altar. Are those the same? Well, no, because the guy with the spray paint is doing something that's obviously bad. And the guy who's getting rid of the satanic altar is doing something that is good.
Ah, so the ends justifies the means. Got it. I thought you weren't a relativist, but maybe, in fact, you are. No, it's both vandalism. You might sympathize with one person over another. I do think that those sorts of things and motivations, that's what comes into play when you start dealing with sentencing and things like that. I totally believe in something one of my pastors once said about certain behavior. It doesn't make it right, but it makes it understandable. So you can have an understanding and a sympathy for the outrage that this person felt over that statue, but it's still vandalism. It's still something that shouldn't be done. It doesn't mean that you make it absolutely equivalent. And in fact, in the law, now I don't know whether there are these particular distinctions in the law when it comes to things like vandalism, but I certainly know there is with things like theft. You have grand larceny. and you have minor thefts. With murder, there's degrees and there's manslaughter. So no, even the law doesn't treat things that have some of the same end result, like with the degrees of murder. At the end of it, you still have a dead body, but the circumstances are taken into consideration.
And so I see them as different for that reason alone. Is a manger the same thing as a satanic altar? Are we bound to that? Well, you support the manger, you're stuck with the satanic altar. It's just the way it is. You're impotent. You are impotent in the face of the Satan. No.
You can have neither in a government building. Problem solved. See how easy that was?
Because the manger is good and the satanic altar is bad. I can make that distinction, so can you, so can everybody. And then you're left, well, who's to say what's good? Who's to say?
Yes, on certain things like that. Matt, you want to know how many people think violence should be committed against you because of your views on gender? And to those people, you are objectively bad, and they would think punching you or committing violence against you, you know the threats you've gotten. They think they're in the service of good. Now, I don't think they're in the service of good because I think threats of violence are inherently bad no matter what the target is. I think threats of violence against people that are saying things that I think are truly hateful, that's not the way you handle it. It seems to me you're just wanting to justify force. That's exactly what you're trying to do, and you're papering it over with, oh, good is good, bad is bad. Doesn't mean that all reactions to things you think are good or bad are on the table.
What's bad? If you find yourself saying that about Satan, well, who's to say that Satan is bad? It's like literally the definition of bad. So, no, who's to say what's good and bad? I don't know, all of us. Like, we all know. This is now.
But I've just shown where there's people that disagree with you. If we were talking about a literal devil, okay, most people would agree. Not a good guy. Crap. I'm thinking of an old Xena episode where Gabrielle was saying, yeah, that Draco guy, not a good guy. But that doesn't mean everything falls into that category, and it doesn't mean violence against property is acceptable. It just doesn't, Matt. Just like the threats against you aren't acceptable because people disagree with your opinions.
Natural law. You know, these are basic moral insights that everyone has access to. How do we know that a satanic altar in a state capitol is bad? Or, you know, who's to say that? We all know that. Every single one of us knows it. The only difference is that some people pretend they don't know it. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to.
Okay, we could stop that. He's going to advertise a show at this point. Let's go back to this other screen. I think I just fell outside of your straw man categorization. I can think it's bad and still think it's bad to vandalize it and say that the solution then is don't have those kinds of displays in a government building. And of course, ultimately, my solution would be don't have government buildings at all. Once you have private property, and just deal with things that way, the problem is very easily solved. But it seems to me that, Matt, forget this whole government building thing. Let's now pretend that that we're back in December, and your neighbor in their front lawn erects a giant Baphomet statue. And in your lawn, you have a nativity scene. Would you agree with someone going onto that person's property? Because people can see it as they're driving by on the street. and decapitate that statue? Why not? Isn't good as good and bad as bad? Why should your neighbor be allowed to do that? And let's say now, if you're going to deal as a Christian, there are polytheistic religions, very ones that Christians would think are idolatrous, with like multiple gods. And they could put up there what we would consider idols on display in their business, where anyone can see them, like in the window of a shop. I mean, can you then just destroy them because good is good and bad is bad? Why not? So the difference is that it's public property. Well, you know, there are people that are, and they, I know Christians are not going to want to hear this. I do think that believing in Christianity, well, Christians will believe what I have to say and then they're not going to like the next part. Do believe that belief requires you being born again, which is a work of the Spirit of regeneration. And it causes you to see things differently. But from people who aren't of that perspective, the Christian religion is in fact very offensive to a lot of them. So to say that everybody knows that a manger scene is good, no, they don't. There's a lot of people who do not see that as good. And if you can't step back and see it from their perspective, yes, you might think it's a straw man argument against Christianity, but I can understand why an atheist says, what, if I don't believe in this guy for, you know, a normal lifespan of 60, 70 years, whatever it might be, I'm going to be tortured for like ever? That seems a bit extreme. Like, you know, that got ugly fast. Now, I do think that's a straw man argument. It doesn't correctly represent Christian theology, but it is how a lot of people see it. And you should be able to understand why that would be extremely offensive. If you can't even try to see things from other people's perspective, you're not humaning properly. So I guess we came to several conclusions here, maybe. Under the strict strictures of the Constitution, they're not really a religion, so perhaps it shouldn't have been allowed for that reason, but you don't handle it through vandalism. But let's pretend like they were an actual religion under a definition most people would accept. Then if you're going to have religious displays, you're going to have religious displays. That's just the way it is. The answer is not to have religious displays. I'm going to give you an example. Back in my fundamentalist days in Florida, I used to be a member of Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale. And at Tradewinds Park on Sample Road, there might be some people here who go, I know where that is. They had a festival of lights, and it was really quite beautiful that you would drive through. And it costs quite a bit of money to sponsor a light display there. And Calvary Chapel, Fort Lauderdale, sponsored a light display there that had Jesus is the reason for the season on there. And a lot of people were super upset about that. They weren't even trying to have other religions there. They were just super offended by that. And Tradewinds is public. It's like a weird, I'm pretty sure it's owned by the county, by Broward County. It might have been some kind of like private public partnership. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's owned by Broward County. So what they just decided is that we're not going to have any religious displays. And that's the way they dealt with it. Otherwise, if you were going to allow the $10,000, $20,000, whatever it was that Calvary Chapel paid to have their display, if the Satanic Temple decided they wanted to do that too, or forget about that, the local mosque or a Hindu temple or whatever it might be, then you need to have that. You need to allow that as well, particularly on public property. Libertarians do believe you can discriminate, but the government can't. The government cannot. That is for private property and private individuals. Okay, well, I think we've beaten this severed goat head to death. So, no show tomorrow. Not sure when I'm going to be doing one on, probably on Monday, but probably, because I've been promising this, we need to go over the delegation chair manual. It's going to be busy few months for me. This upcoming weekend, I am going out to Arizona. I am the convention parliamentarian for Arizona. The weekend after that, I will be in Florida. I'm the convention parliamentarian for Florida. I am the speaker at some of these. I need to, well, I have an older presentation. It's, when I say it's older, I've only given it at a couple conventions, so I think that's probably what I'm going to be giving at the Florida convention. In February, I believe I am going to the anti-deep state rally in Washington, D.C. And then the first weekend in March, I am the convention parliamentarian for the Libertarian Party of Michigan. And is it March or April? One of these, I think it might be the beginning of March. Might be the first weekend in March. The week before Michigan, I am Pennsylvania's parliamentarian, and then there's the Colorado convention, at which I'm nothing, and I could just get completely trashed, and Wayne will have to find me in a bathroom somewhere, because Mike Seebeck is the convention parliamentarian for Colorado. Like, it's amazing to me that, like, this is the first time in years that I think I've been to a convention where I'm not like something. I'm not campaigning. I'm not the parliamentarian. I'm not the bylaws committee chair. I just get to sit and vote and argue and drink. I don't know what to do with myself. And in April, I am the convention parliamentarian for Minnesota. And May is the national convention. So it's going to be extraordinarily busy. So with all that said, I will do as many live streams as possible. And now at the end, if you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do hit the subscribe button. I would truly appreciate it. I hope you all have an awesome night. Bye-bye.
Given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians, or choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business, not because they want